Imagine waking up in a place where your body no longer knows where the floor is, where up and down stop existing, and your mind quietly starts to wonder if the version of you that has always lived inside your skull is beginning to dissolve. Now let's go deeper. Gravity isn't simply a force that keeps your feet planted on the ground. It's the silent architect of the human mind. Since the first microorganisms clung to the oceans billions of years ago, every single form of life on Earth has evolved under the constant pull of 1G. Gravity has shaped not only our bodies, bones, and muscles, but the very way our brain organizes reality. You don't notice it, but gravity is the reference point your nervous system uses to understand everything: motion, direction, orientation, danger, balance, even emotion. The relationship between your brain and gravity is so intimate that scientists often call it the forgotten sense, a background signal so constant that the mind no longer realizes it exists until it's gone. Deep inside your inner ear lives the vestibular system, a set of tiny fluid-filled canals and crystals that act like the gyroscope of your consciousness. These structures tell your brain where you are, how fast you're moving, and which way is down. They allow you to walk without falling, reach for an object without missing, understand where your body begins and ends, and maintain emotional equilibrium. But all of this depends on gravity tugging at you every second of your life. When that force disappears, the brain loses the anchor it has relied on for millions of years. It doesn't just lose balance, it loses orientation of self. In microgravity environments, astronauts report sensations so bizarre that they sound almost surreal, feeling like their body is upside down when it's not, sensing their limbs drifting away from them, or experiencing the eerie impression that their head is floating separately from the rest of their torso. These sensations are not hallucinations. They are the brain desperately trying to interpret signals that no longer make sense. Without gravity guiding the vestibular system, the brain must rewrite its internal rules from scratch. Neurons fire in unusual patterns. Sensory inputs conflict. Vision, touch, and motion no longer agree with each other. This creates a cascade of cognitive effects: difficulty focusing, emotional swings, irritability, temporary disorientation, and a creeping sense of vulnerability that doesn't exist on Earth. In this state, even simple tasks demand enormous mental energy. The mind becomes hyper-aware of the body, yet paradoxically less grounded in it. You might know logically that you're inside a spacecraft, safe, breathing, but your subconscious is convinced that something is deeply wrong, because for the first time in your life, the universe is no longer holding you. The force that shaped your ancestors, defined your instincts, and stabilized every thought you've ever had suddenly lets go. And in that moment, the human mind reveals how fragile it truly is. Before we continue, consider this. If you were placed in a room with no light, no sound, no smell, no wind, no floor, and no physical point of reference, how long would it take for your mind to start inventing its own reality? Minutes? Hours? Days? In space, that process begins almost immediately. Gravity is not just a physical force, it's a psychological anchor, an invisible axis that tells the brain, you are here, you exist, the world is stable. When that anchor disappears, the mind enters unfamiliar territory. In a microgravity environment, where nothing has weight, direction means nothing, and stability doesn't exist, the brain loses one of its primary tools for constructing spatial consciousness. And without spatial consciousness, the sense of reality begins to weaken. Astronauts report experiencing something often referred to as gravitational depersonalization, not an official psychiatric term, but one frequently mentioned in NASA interviews and mission debriefs. It's the feeling that the body is no longer yours, that the mind is half a second behind, that your identity becomes lighter than it should be. Part of this happens because, without gravity, the brain rewires how it interprets motor commands. Simple movements, like reaching out with your hand, feel disconnected. You initiate the motion, but you don't feel full ownership of it. The absence of physical resistance creates a barely perceptible delay, but enough to generate continuous cognitive dissonance. It's like living inside a simulator with permanent lag. This altered state opens the door to something even more unsettling: the gradual fading of the sense of presence. When the brain stops receiving consistent signals from the body, because the body weighs nothing, floats unpredictably, rotates freely, and moves without effort, it begins questioning the very fact of physical existence. That's when astronauts describe sensations like watching themselves from outside, or thinking inside a bubble detached from reality. This is not mysticism, it's neurobiology unraveling. The absence of gravity also changes blood flow in the brain, increasing intracranial pressure and causing slight swelling that disrupts memory, attention, and emotional processing. Combined, these effects create a dangerous scenario where the mind starts filling sensory gaps with internal constructs, leading to illusions, false perceptions, and distortions in the perception of time. Hours feel like minutes. Minutes feel like hours. The linear structure of reality, which depended on constant terrestrial feedback, begins to collapse. That's why, far from Earth, the head doesn't just feel different, it thinks differently. And the longer someone stays in this state, the more the mind struggles to rebuild a psychological anchor that no longer exists. This is only the beginning of what happens to human consciousness when it's pulled away from the gravitational environment that shaped its evolution. If there's one thing humans believe they understand, it's time. We divide our entire lives into seconds, minutes, hours. But that only works because the brain receives constant environmental cues, light patterns, gravity, body movement, and predictable biological rhythms. Now imagine losing all those cues at once. That is exactly what happens when someone leaves Earth's gravitational field. In space, time doesn't just pass differently, it stops behaving like time at all. The absence of gravity directly affects the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's master clock, responsible for regulating sleep, wake cycles, energy, mood, and temporal awareness. On Earth, this clock is anchored by sunrise and sunset, but in orbit, astronauts see 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets every single day. The brain was never designed to process that. Without gravity and without stable cycles, the internal clock begins to break down. Astronauts often report believing they slept 8 hours when they actually slept 2, thinking a task took 20 minutes when it actually took 3 hours, losing the instinctive sense of when to eat, rest, or socialize, struggling to distinguish yesterday from 2 or 3 days ago. It's like living inside a continuous stream with no beginning, middle, or end. Psychologists at NASA refer to this as temporal perceptual distortion, and it becomes more intense the longer someone remains away from Earth. Without a stable sense of time, the brain shifts into a subtle emergency mode, causing impulsiveness, irritability, mental fatigue, and even dissociative episodes. In extreme cases, astronauts experience phenomena similar to those reported by isolated polar explorers, but in space, everything is amplified by microgravity. Some describe feeling as if they are trapped inside the same repeating second, or as if time slips and melts away between thoughts. And here's the unsettling part. The farther someone gets from Earth, the more time seems to lose its structure, its density, and even its meaning. It raises a profound question. Was the human mind built only to function inside Earth's time, or does gravity itself shape the very way we experience the passing of existence? Before we dive into the heart of this topic, picture this. You are floating in absolute silence. There is no wind, no vibration, no weight, no smell, no reference point. The only thing you can sense is your own heartbeat, and even then, sometimes you feel like it's stopped. Now imagine that in this silence, you begin to hear footsteps behind you, or voices, or see shadows drifting in the corner of your eye. This happens, and there is a scientific explanation. On Earth, the brain depends on a continuous stream of sensory input to remain stable. Gravity, ambient sound, the weight of your own body, air pressure, constant vibrations, all of it tells the brain the world is functioning normally. But in space, the absence of these signals creates a deep sensory vacuum, something so extreme that neurons enter a state of hyperactivity. In this condition, astronauts often experience sensory deprivation hallucinations, and they are far from rare. Astronaut reports describe hearing whispers as if someone called their name, seeing flashes of light even with eyes closed, feeling a tap on the shoulder while floating alone, noticing moving shadows where nothing exists at all. The brightest flashes are caused by cosmic particles striking the retina, a phenomenon that simply does not exist on Earth. But the most disturbing effect isn't the flashes, it's the illusion of presence. The human brain evolved to detect other beings nearby as a survival mechanism. In space, that instinct becomes disoriented. The mind, desperate to avoid total isolation, begins to invent presences to fill the emptiness. Researchers call this the third man syndrome, the sensation that someone else is with you, even when you logically know you're alone. Inside a space station, this can be unsettling. On long missions, to the moon, to Mars, or deeper, it can become dangerous. Feelings of being watched, mild paranoia, heightened internal dialogue, and even panic episodes can emerge as the brain struggles to interpret an environment with too few signals to stabilize consciousness. And here's the frightening part. The longer a person stays away from gravity, the more likely it becomes that the brain will fill the void with things that don't exist, not because the person is insane, but because the brain is trying to stay functional in a reality that fundamentally dismantles human sensory systems. It is the quietest and most dangerous form of chaos in the universe. The chaos that begins inside the mind itself. There is a persistent myth about space that only the weak fall apart. But the truth is the opposite. Space spares no one, not even the disciplined, the resilient, or the emotionally stable, because the human mind was never designed to face absolute emptiness. The problem begins when a person realizes they are facing something that doesn't exist on Earth, an environment that is infinite, silent, and indifferent. There is no sign of life, no smell of soil, no wind, no horizon. It is the total absence of everything the mind evolved to interpret. This emptiness creates a phenomenon space psychologists call existential isolation. It's not normal loneliness. It's the deep, disturbing sensation that you are outside the story of humanity, suspended in a place where nothing acknowledges your existence. Not sound, not natural light, not organic life. It speaks not to logic, but to instinct. Even highly trained astronauts report profound emotional changes after weeks away from Earth. Emotions become more intense than they should be. Small frustrations turn into internal explosions. Risk perception increases. Repetitive thought loops emerge, and episodes of sudden, unexplained emotional drop-offs occur. This happens because microgravity alters the limbic system, the part of the brain responsible for emotional regulation. Without the natural weight of the body, which constantly modulates hormones and neurotransmitters, emotional stability begins to drift. It's as if emotions become weightless, floating without an anchor. The space environment also removes one of Earth's strongest psychological stabilizers, contact with nature. The human mind depends on organic stimuli, trees, sounds, textures, daylight patterns, to regulate stress, mood, and motivation. Without those natural cues, the emotional system loses the reference points that kept humans balanced for thousands of years. Some astronauts report an even more unsettling effect: delayed emotional emptiness, a state where at first everything seems fine, but slowly, a quiet heaviness begins to grow. It is not sadness, it is not anxiety, it is a deep internal silence, as if the mind were shutting down emotional processes to conserve psychological energy. And the farther someone gets from Earth, in orbit, on the moon, on the way to Mars, the stronger this psychological void becomes, not because the individual is weak, but because space is an environment that gradually unravels the structures that make a human human. Which leads to a final question: are we truly prepared to sustain emotional health away from the only environment our biology understands? Or are we underestimating how deeply space can erode the human psyche as we push beyond the reach of gravity, beyond time, beyond the senses, and even beyond the boundaries of our own identity? One truth becomes undeniable: we still don't fully understand what happens to the human mind once it leaves Earth behind. And yet, we keep going, we keep exploring, we keep stepping into the unknown. Maybe that's what makes us human, the drive to move forward even when we don't fully grasp what lies ahead. If this video made you think, question, or see the universe through a different lens, then stay with us. Like the video so the algorithm knows this kind of content matters. Comment what intrigued you the most. Your questions might become the next episodes. Subscribe so you don't miss the continuation of this deep series about the hidden side of the human mind in space. And if you know someone who would be captivated by this topic, share this video with them. It might be the exact mystery they've been waiting to explore.